And we're live.
All right. So we'll start at about 6:35, you said?
Yeah, about 35. We'll wait
All right.
a few minutes. To the few people who've popped in so far, hi. As per usual, we're just going to wait, just a few minutes to get people, or give people time to roll in. So I guess I'll just fill the empty space right now. Also, apologies if my mic quality is worse than usual. My usual microphone is not here. I'm using my webcam's mic. But so thanks to those of you who have submitted your homework already. To those of you that haven't, please get in contact with me as soon as possible. If you've already sent it and I haven't responded, I've got it. Well, at least for one of you. But besides that, yeah, if you haven't gone around to it yet, just try and submit last week's homework alongside this week's when it gets assigned. Remember, you can just send that to me in Discord. I don't mind how you upload it, whether it be Google Drive or GitHub or whatever, just as long as it gets to me. I will then forward it to our instructors who will look over and provide feedback. Yeah, so last week's homework, that'll be Cole who's looking at it.
And for those of you who are with us now, if you haven't already, make sure you download the starter code from the Discord.
I was trying to point at you, as in, oh yeah, he's got a point, but it wasn't really working because it's very awkward. It's kind of mirrored. Is it mirrored? No, you can read my thing fine.
Yeah, it's just. It's also like a sharper view than like what my camera's actually getting. Yeah, and the starter code should be in the announcements.
Mm-hmm.
It should just take you to a Google Drive, and then top right there should be a download button. So go ahead and grab that, unzip that whenever you get the chance if you haven't already.
All right, Jason, while we're waiting here, if you want to click share at the bottom of StreamYard, it won't pop up on the screen yet, but I'll be able to just throw it onto the screen.
Yeah, move that over here.
Yeah. All right. I think we can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Welcome everyone who is joining us today, either live or in the recording. I'm Jason Fadness. I'm the president of the Video Game Development Club at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, and I will be teaching you all about user interfaces in Unity, or more specifically, how to make user interfaces for games. So once again, if you haven't already, go ahead and download the starter code that is in the GitHub the Discord announcements. That should give you a zipped Unity project. And once you open that up, you should see a screen something like this.
And just popping in for a quick second to say, if you are watching this, after the fact and you're not on our Discord, all of these recordings, they should be in a GitHub repository. You'll be able to find the starter code in this week's corresponding folder.
All right. Should I wait around for anyone else to download that, or?
We haven't got anyone in the chat saying to wait, so I think just go for it.
Then we'll get started here. Okay. So if I go ahead and play this starter code, you should see some crates and skulls popping up from the bottom of the screen. If you click them, they'll disappear. So this is the game we have to start with, and we're going to be adding UI to this. More specifically, we're going to add a score text that will update throughout the course of the game. as we click on these blocks. And then we'll also be creating a game over screen with a working restart button that will allow us to replay the game even after we lose. And then finally, we're going to go through creating a main menu. This main menu will have buttons that will allow us to control the difficulty of our game. So first things first, we'll start with the score text. So if you go over to your hierarchy panel on the left, it's on my left over here for me, and right click, you should see near the bottom a UI section. And then at the top there, we should see text and text mesh pro. Quick difference about these two is the text mesh pro is more versatile and has more features. Just plain text is basically just a legacy tool. So we are going to be working with the text mesh pro. And when you click on that and add that into your project, you should see that we have this text TMP pop up in the hierarchy. And you'll also see this canvas. So all UI elements are going to exist within a canvas. And as we just saw, when you create a UI element without there being a canvas, it will automatically create one for us. Now, I'm going to cover a few things with this canvas. If you go over to the inspector under the canvas section, you should see a render mode. There are 3 render modes. So screen space overlay, screen space camera, and world space. So this first one is going to be placing text on your screen relative to your screen. The second one, the camera, is going to be placing text relative to the camera, and it will change with the camera. And then we will also have world space, which places it in the world like any other object. So we'll have a 3D position, rotation, etc., which means you could also block this out with other objects you have in your world. So we can just go ahead and use the default overlay. And now I'm going to go ahead and click on our new text element. I'm going to change the name to make it clearer to be score. And actually, if I double click score, I can get a good view of this item. And I can do the same thing for canvas. So right now, that looks huge. The canvas is absolutely massive compared to the little background of our game here. However, this actually just represents the screen. So if I go press play, our text is just at the bottom left here, pretty small. So the canvas may seem massive, but it's not actually. And we also see that where our text is relative to this canvas. Currently, I have this text element anchored to the center of the screen, or center of the canvas, rather. So if I actually type in the coordinates 0, 0, it'll appear in the middle of our canvas. And I can actually change that by going over to this, you see these double box here in the rect transform, and it gives you all these different options. So for instance, I can go to the top left here to anchor my text element to the top left of our canvas. And you'll actually even see that our position changes to show that. So now if I go 0, 0, it'll appear in the top left. Now I'm going to just move this over to a place that I think fits well. So I'm going to just have it be up here in the top left. And now we're going to actually change the text itself. So with your score text selected, you should have a Text Mesh Pro section in your inspector. And then you have this big text box. So I'm going to just type into this box score. And then here you can also change other things about this text, such as here you have the font asset. And if I just click this little target, this target symbol, then it'll give me a few different options. You can go ahead and change these to whatever you want. I'm going to go with Mara Green regular. And then I'm going to leave the size the same, but you could also change it to like bold, italicized, underlined, whatever you want. I'm going to just leave it as is though. What I am going to change though is the color. Let's go for a blue. All right. So now if I play the game, I now see that my score text is appearing in the top left here. So, but right now that score text is just kind of sitting here. It's not doing anything. So we are going to create some code to change that. You should, in your assets folder, see a game manager script. It should have this gear symbol here. So go ahead and double click that to open it up. I'm using Visual Studios. All right. Please let me know if you need me to slow down at all. Otherwise, I'll assume that everyone's keeping up with me.
Don't worry, I'll pop in to tell you if anyone says anything in the chat.
So first things first, we are going to need another library for this code. So I'm going to start by typing using TM Pro. So this is going to give us access to the TextMesh Pro functions. And now we're going to add a couple more variables to the top of this class. First, we're going to have a private int score, which is going to, of course, be the points that we've accumulated throughout the course of the game. And then we're going to have a public text mesh pro UGUI. And that is the capital U, capital G, capital U, I at the end there. So make sure you have that spelled correctly. And then I'm going to call this score text. So this will be our reference to the text mesh pro. And because it is public, I can define this in the editor. So save that, and with no compile errors, I should be able to select my game manager object in the hierarchy panel. And then under the script section, I'll actually see score text at the bottom here. So I am going to just click and drag our score text that we created earlier. I'm going to drag it into this box here. So now it's sitting there in our score text. So I'm going to go back to our script. And at the bottom here within, while still being in this class, so make sure you still have that last bracket there, I'm going to create a new function. So that's going to be public void update score. And it's going to take in an integer as an argument, score to add. So what this function is going to do is it's going to update the score by adding score to add to what it currently is. And then we're also going to update the text. So for that first part, we're just going to have score plus equals score to add. And then we are going to change the score text so that that's going to be score text. And to actually access the string that represents what it says, that's simply dot text. And we can set that equal to whatever we want. Now this is going to remove whatever we have in there at the moment when this is called. So we're actually going to have to start
with... Hey Jason,
with...
sorry, just popping in for a second. Somebody's asking if you could zoom in a bit. Your screen is fairly small.
Let's see, how would I do that?
Control plus.
How do you zoom in on this? Surely there's a way to zoom.
Let's see. You've stumped us. Oh, control mouse wheel up.
Control mouse wheel up. Oh, yeah, that worked. All right, how is this?
All right, we got it, guys.
Okay. Sorry about
I
that,
didn't
guys.
actually respond. There's going to be a bit of a delay. I was just that was funny. Okay, they said it's better. Carry on.
All right, sorry. Yeah, I didn't know about that myself, so that's good to know. Okay. So we're saying score text.text equal to score, and then I'm going to have a plus here, and then score. So now our text will be set equal to the actual word score, and then whatever value score is at the given moment. So next, we need to still initialize our score. So in our start function, I'm going to have score equal to 0. And we're also going to call update score with 0 as the argument. That way, it'll actually, when we start the game, we'll have score be saying 0 instead of nothing. So save that and go back to Unity. And so if you click play, you'll now see score 0. But right now, I'm clicking these blocks and nothing's happening. That's because we now have the ability to change the score, but we're not actually changing the score. So that is going to be our next step here. So we are going to now, sorry, I'm losing my place here. We're going to go to our target script. This should also just be in your assets folder. I'm going to make some changes here. So this target script is attached to those blocks and the skulls, those things that pop up on our screen. And then there's like one copy of this script attached to each of these objects. So we're going to create a couple variables here at the top of the class. First is going to be public int point value. And this is going to represent how many points the block that this script is attached to is worth. And I'm also going to have private game manager. Game manager. So this is going to simply reference our game manager script, which will allow us access to those functions that are in there. And so to that end, we are going to create the reference to this game manager. And we're going to do that in our start function. So we're going to set game manager equal to game object with a capital G dot find, and then the name of the object we want to find. So that should be game manager as spelled like this. So more specifically, it's going to be looking at this game manager object we have here. So we want to make sure that our finds argument is going to be the same as that name. So you should need that space. You need these capitalizations here. So that will get us the object, but we want more specifically the script. So we can do dot get component, and then the type of this component is going to be game manager within these angle brackets, and then finish it off with a couple of parentheses. All right. So that will give us the reference to our game manager. And now we're going to scroll down to our on mouse down function. So this is what is destroying our blocks, the skulls, when we click on them. Now we also want to, when we click on these blocks, to update the score. Now we can use Game Manager to access our update score function that we created earlier. And then we're going to increase the score by point value. All right. So now that that's done, save the script. And now we're going to actually go and give all of those blocks point values, because right now they're all set to 0. If you go to your assets folder and then go to prefabs, you'll see that we have here those blocks and the skull. And if you select one of these guys, you should see a target script in that list, and we have point value there. So I'm going to go ahead and give all these blocks scores, points. So you can give each of these 4 blocks different point values. Changing one will not change any of the others. And that's a nice, easy way to have these properties that are independent of one another and are also instanced. So I'm going to just have all these good blocks be worth 5 points for simplicity's sake. And then I'm going to have the bad one, the skull, have a point value of -5. So we're actually going to lose points if we click on that. So now if I click play, we should see that if I destroy a block, our score goes up.
Here, wait. Someone in chat just asked if they can see the on mouse down function for a bit, just to
Oh yeah.
repeat.
On mouse down, right here. So we just added this line here. Game manager update score point value.
And somebody else asked, did you import anything for Text Mesh Pro?
No, we are not using a Text Mesh Pro in this particular script. So there are no import statements that we need to add to this one.
All right, I think that's the questions for now. By the way, I just want to say, good job, chat, staying active. They asked in Game Manager for Text Mesh Pro.
Say again. What about Game Manager?
That's where they're asking about Text Mesh Pro, I think.
Oh, in the Game Manager? Oh. You mean for the Game Manager script? This is where we had the using TM Pro in Game Manager script. Or am I misunderstanding that?
So there's a slight delay. No, that was good.
Okay.
All right, sorry, carry on.
All right. So I didn't get to demonstrate that the skulls are also making you lose points. So yeah, there you go. So skulls, I clicked 2 skulls, so now we're at -10 points. And then of course I can click any of these blocks to affect the score. All right. So now with that, we have a dynamic score text. So next, what we're going to be doing is adding that game over screen. And then, of course, we're going to create the ability for us to lose and go to that screen. So there are a couple ways you could do this. One way is you could make all of this in this one scene. And then you could just hide and unhide certain elements. For instance, if I select my score, I go to the top of the inspector, you see this check mark. So if I just click that, my score is gone. So what this does is when it's checked, that this means that this game object is active. And when I uncheck it, it's deactive. So that's a nice, easy way to disable certain items and remove it from your world, if only temporarily. However, creating everything in one scene for larger games is going to get really messy really fast. So we're actually going to create a new scene for our game over scene and our main menu. So first things first, I'm going to save this scene, and then we're going to go to File, New Scene. And then, so that will take us to this brand new scene. You should see Untitled at the top here. And I'm going to just immediately save this. I'm going to immediately save this to our Scenes folder. I'm going to call it Game Over. All right, and you should see that name now reflected in the top left here. All right. So I'm going to now create a text mesh pro item. And then this, I'm going to rename this to be title. And it's simply going to say game over. Now, right now, it's kind of hard to see. So I'm going to increase the size. Let's go with 64. I'm going to change the color. Let's go with a red. I'm feeling a red. And I'm also going to make it bold. And to stay consistent, I'll also change the font to margarine regular. Now let's move this to the center of the screen. So just 0, 0. And now, okay, so that's looking good, but I don't like how the word over is on an extra line. So one way I could fix that is simply extend this box. So extend the width so it goes on one line. But I can also, down here, down below, like all this bold, the text color, all that stuff, you should see a wrapping. And if I just disable that.
Hi, sorry, just popping back in for a second. Someone's getting an issue with the text conversion to tmpro dot tech. It's a text mesh. Do you know what I'm talking about? Text mesh pro UGUI.
Text mesh pro UG.
Should there not be a U there? Text mesh pro GUI. Should that be the?
Is this in the script or?
Here, if you pop into Streamlab, you should be able to see the actual.
Streamlab. Where is that?
Yeah, they said yes, it's in the script.
Oh, okay. If you mean this,
sorry, is what I meant to say. But
Text Mesh Pro U GUI, is this what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a problem with this?
With text conversion, it says.
Text conversion. So I guess I'll ask. Well, make sure you have using TM Pro so they recognize this. But it does sound like it's recognizing that. Let's see. The only thing we should be doing with score text here is this line. Score text.text equals score and then plus the actual score variable. And then score here should be an int. So if I get, yeah. So it should be private int score. Does this all look correct? Or is there anything that seems off?
That fixed it.
Okay. Sounds good. And sorry if I'm going a little faster, guys. I can try to slow it down if that would help. At the very least for the script, since it seems like I'm going a little too fast with that. Okay. So as I was saying, you can disable the wrapping to get this all in one line. And I'm also going to, right above wrapping, you should see alignment. I'm going to just click the second one to center everything. There we go. So now we have this nice game over text. And now we want a button. That is going to simply be, I can right click and go to UI. And in this same area where you see text mesh pro, you'll also see button and button text mesh pro. Difference between these two is going to be same sort of thing as with the text. The text mesh pro version is just going to have more functionality, more versatile. So we're going to be working with that. So now we should have our button appear, and you should also see that we have a text TMP as the child of this button. This item is going to control what the button actually says here. So I can go ahead and change this to say restart button. Nope, don't want the enter. There we go. So now restart, and actually I'm going to get rid of button. There we go, restart. And I'll also, while I'm at it, change the name of our button to be restart button. Now I'm going to go ahead and move this down below our game over text. Okay. So if I click play, I can now see my game over text and I see my button. And I can click this. It does darken so when I click it. So it is definitely registering my clicks. But of course, right now it's not doing anything because we haven't given it any functionality yet. So we want to, when we click this restart button, we want to go back to our main game scene. To handle that, we are going to create another object that's going to house a script that will allow us to then, and we're going to connect a function from that script to this button. So to create that object, I'm going to go and right click on our hierarchy panel. And then I'm going to click create empty. So that'll just create a game object. I'm going to rename this as scene loader with a space in between. All right. Now I'm going to click add component. And I'm going to go search up script. And then you should see new script at the bottom here. So I'm going to click that. And I'm going to create a script called scene loader. So once you type that in, scene loader, go ahead and create an add. So now we should see a script appear in our assets. And we're going to go ahead and edit that. So with your scene loader scripts pulled up, make sure you have scene loader actually selected. Sometimes I've had it be I open up a script and I end up in like one of the ones I already had open. So make sure you're in scene loader. And now first things first, we are going to need another library to actually perform scene transitions. So that is going to be using Unity engine dot scene management. All right, Unity engine scene management. And now we're going to create a new function here. And this is going to be a pretty short, sweet function. It's going to be public void start game. And it's going to simply have one line. Scene manager dot load scene async. And then the name of the scene we want to load in when we call this function. So this is going to be set equal to a string that says main game. And make sure you spell this the same way, because if I just go back to Unity for a second here, I'll go back to the script in a moment. It is going to be looking for our main game scene, and it's going to be looking for this specific name. So make sure that you have main game spelled with this capitalization and with the space in between. All right. I'll wait a moment just in case anyone needs to catch up. Okay. Okay, so now we have our function created, and we just need to connect that functionality to our button. So if I click on our restart button, you should see near the bottom of the inspector, there's this on click and list is empty. And then on the right, you should see a little plus. Go ahead and click that. So now we have these three boxes that appeared. Though the one on the right, this says no function. I can't actually select that. And then on the bottom left, it says none object. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect our scene loader object to this button. So I can simply click and drag scene loader into this bottom left box where it says none object. So now it's connected to our scene loader object, and now this right box is able to be selected. And I'm going to click that. At the bottom, you should see scene loader, and then it will have all of the functions and a bunch of other stuff that we didn't see before within this list. One of the items is going to be the start game function that we just created. So go ahead and select that. Okay. So before we can actually swap scenes, though, we need to make the game aware that there are these different scenes to transfer to. So we're going to go to File, Build Settings near the bottom. And then that should open up this little window here. And we're just going to click this button on the top right called Add Open Scenes. So now the game is aware of this game over scene. Now you can X out of that once you've done that. And then go to your Assets folder, go to Scenes, and then open up the main game again. And then we're going to do the exact same thing we just did. So File, Build Settings, and then Add Open Scenes. So now the game is aware of both the main game scene and the game over scene. All right, so I'm going to go back over to my game over scene. So if I click play, I should be able to click this restart button and it will take us into our main game and it will start up immediately, working just as we left it. All right, so we should now have a game over screen with a working restart button, but we currently don't have a way to actually go from the game to the game over screen. So I'm going to transfer over to our main game scene here. Sorry, I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything in my notes here. Okay. Okay, so we are going to open up our game manager script. So go to game manager. And now we're going to add the scene management function in here as well. So that means we're going to need that same import statement. So that's going to be using Unity engine dot scene management. Okay. Nice. Okay. And then we are going to create a new function. I'm going to just do this at the bottom here. Called public, let me spell public correctly, public void game over. All right, and then this is going to be same sort of thing as we did in our scene loader. So that's going to be scene manager dot load scene is sync, and then so because we're in the main game scene, we want to transfer over to the game over. So we're going to go type in as the argument game over, since that's the name of our scene. All right. Once again, I'll wait a little bit here to make sure everyone gets that. Okay. So make sure you save that. And now what we want to do is transfer over to the game over screen when one of our good blocks goes down below the screen. So in order to facilitate that, because we don't want these skulls to trigger it, we need a way to differentiate between, is this a skull or is this one of the good blocks? So I'm going to go back to Unity. And then if you go back to our prefabs, assets prefabs, and then you just select one of our blocks here, you should see near the top of the inspector a tag untagged. If I click that and go to the bottom, there is an add tag option. Go ahead and click that. Now we should see a list is empty, and then a plus that we can click. And I'm going to create a tag that's just called bad, capital B. Save. All right. Now if I reselect our bad1 prefab, I can go to the tag and actually give it this new tag that I just created. Go ahead and do that. Okay. Now I'm going to go to our target script. And we're going to actually add the functionality to recognize that a bad block versus a good block went below our screen. So we're going to go to this onTriggerEnter function. So what this is doing is we have actually, you have the scene that you can see with like the grid, and then below that is this little sensor bar. And when something crosses that sensor bar, it triggers this onTriggerEnter function. So currently all that it does is it destroys the game object that hits that sensor. But now we also want it to see, okay, if one of the good blocks hit our sensor, we want to trigger a game over. So we're going to do that with an if little g game object. So just to briefly go over this, because I realized I didn't yet. Before I did a capital G game object, that is referring to the class itself, game object. Little g game object, on the other hand, is going to refer to the object that this script is actually attached to. So, for instance, one of the blocks would be this little g game object. So we're going to do if game object dot compare tag, and then we're going to look for that bad tag that we just created. Make sure it's spelled the same way as you spelled the tag. So now this will be true if the game object that hits our sensor bar has the tag bad. But we actually want the opposite of this. We want to see if the object that hits our sensor does not have this tag, because then that means it's one of the good blocks. So I'm going to just plop an exclamation point at the beginning here to notch this statement. All right. Now, if not a bad, so if one of the good blocks hits our sensor bar, we are going to access the game manager and call the game over function. You should already have access to the game manager object from our earlier work. Okay. I'll once again wait a little bit here to make sure everyone's caught up with that. All right. So now that we have that done, if I go back to our main game and I click play, we should notice that. So I'm going to click these blocks. So we just saw that skull go down below, and we're still going here. But if I let this crate go down below, we go to our game over screen now. And of course, I can go hit restart, and we're just back where we started. Our score gets reset as well. All right. Are there any questions at this point in time before we move on to the next topic?
Doesn't seem like there are any questions so far.
Okay. So then we are down to making the main menu. So it's kind of strange that we have this game here, but we get launched directly into the action. So, and also it can be kind of bland just having
Oh,
this
hold
one.
on, sorry.
Oh.
They just realized their score isn't updating.
Ah, the score is not updating. Let's see. Oh, I guess one quick thing. Did you go into your prefabs and give these different point values? They should have whatever point value you gave them. I've been giving them all 5 with the exception of the skull, which has a score of -5. That can be one thing easy to miss. And otherwise, let's see what else it could be. The other main thing would be on the on mouse down, make sure you're passing in point value. And of course, make sure you define point value at that point if you haven't already. Does any of that help, or are we still getting that issue?
Bit of a delay in chat, so I'm waiting to
Okay.
see if. All right, they haven't responded, so I'm going to hope that it's working. If it's
Okay.
not, we're going to have office hours later this week, so feel free to pop in and we can troubleshoot further then.
All right. Okay. So, what was I? Oh, yes. We are going to now be working on the main menu. So, similar to what we did before, we're actually going to create a new scene for this. So, once again, that's simply File, New Scene. And once again, I'm going to just immediately save this into our Scenes folder. And we'll just call it Main Menu. Okay. And I'm going to start by creating a title text. So, you guys should be used to this by now. UI Text Mesh Pro. I'm going to rename this to be title. And then you can name this whatever you want, but I'm going to just call our little game Crates. Nice and simple. Let's change the color so I can actually see this. And then while we're at it, let's also update the font. Let's make it bold and large. There we go. I'm also going to do the same thing I did before with disable our wrapping and change the alignment to centered. And let's put this in the middle of the screen as well. Okay. So similar stuff as we did before. And now I'm going to create 3 buttons, one for each level of difficulty, easy, medium, and hard. So first, I'm going to just create one button, and once again I'm going to use button Text Mesh Pro. I'm going to rename this first button to be called the Easy button, and then I'm going to go over to its text and change it to say Easy. I'm going to accidentally grab the text box. Nice little hint, click the actual Easy button, the button itself, to drag the entire thing more easily. I'm going to put it on the bottom left here. I'm also going to resize it since that text isn't very large. Okay. And next, I'm going to hit Control D while I have this button selected to create another one. I'm going to do that one more time to create. So now I have in total 3 buttons. However, you probably don't see these other 2, and that is because if I select one of these and move, they're all stacked on top of each other. So I'm going to just quickly get all these guys apart. And now this second one I made, I'm going to make this be the medium button. And I'll also change the text while I'm at it to say medium. That button's getting a little cramped, so I'll increase the size to plop that in the middle. And then, of course, our last button is going to be the heart button. And of course, it will say heart. All right. So now we have our 3 buttons. Go ahead and save that. And we are going to be... So this is going to include a scene transition like we did before, except this one's a little different. It's not quite as simple as we did before. Because this time we need to be able to communicate to the main game scene what difficulty we want to set, we want to play with. And there's a few different ways you could do this. What we are going to be doing in this tutorial is creating an object here in our main menu that is going to actually stay with us as we go to the different scenes. Normally they get deleted, we lose all the progress, all the data that was with that. So what we're going to actually do is we're going to go back to our game over scene and make some changes to that. Okay. So we're going to go to our scene loader, and we're actually going to be making this a prefab. So to make this a prefab, we're simply going to go to our assets and prefabs folder. And actually, I could just do this wherever I wanted, but best keep a good organization. And if I just click and drag our scene loader down here, it'll make a prefab out of it. So now we can use this wherever we want, and it'll be just as it was here. So this will allow us to use this script in multiple places pretty easily. And we're actually going to delete the scene loader that's in the game over screen. So go ahead and right click delete. And now we need to go back to our button and redefine that functionality. Because currently it's trying to find that scene loader and it's finding that it's gone. We can actually just click and drag our prefab from the bottom to this box and reselect our start game function. Okay. And now we're going to need to make some changes to our scene loader script. So we're going to go ahead and go to scene loader. And we're going to need a couple things. First, we are going to have a public int difficulty. And then in our start function, we're going to have a don't destroy on load. And then as an argument, we're going to have this dot game object. All right. So this is what's going to allow our scene load object, which would normally get destroyed when we go to a different scene, to actually persist. And if we have our game object, we have this script, we're also going to have this difficulty variable, which we're going to be using to tell the main game, this is what what difficulty we want to play with. So go ahead and save that. Oh, and actually we also are going to be changing up our start game function a little bit here. So first it's going to take in an int difficulty value. And then we're also going to set difficulty to be equal to difficulty value. All right. Now save that. And now I'm going to just make sure that our restart button is all set. Okay, I was afraid of that. So when we changed our function, it did lose sight of it. So you are going to have to go back to your function, or sorry, go back to your buttons on click event and reselect that start game. And you should actually see that now it has in the parentheses int to reflect the changes that we just made. And don't worry about the number that pops up here. You can leave that as 0. That won't matter here in the game over screen. I'll just pop over to the script here for anyone who didn't quite get those last couple changes I put in. So just a refresh, we have public int difficulty now. We have this don't destroy on load. Our start game now has a new argument. And then we have this setting the difficulty value that we, variable that we created up here. Okay. So with that done, we're going to go back to our main menu. And now we are going to give these buttons the ability to actually change scenes. So all 3 of these buttons are actually going to share a script. So I'm going to control select all 3 of these buttons in my hierarchy panel. And then I'm going to actually give these buttons functionality via script instead of through the editor like I did with the restart button. So we're going to add a component. I'm going to create another new script. And I'm going to call this difficulty button. Okay. Once you have that difficulty button, go ahead and create an ad. And then let's open up that brand new script. Okay. Once again, if you didn't catch the name, that's difficulty button. And we are going to first add a new library. So that's going to be using Unity engine.ui. So this is how we're going to get access to the button and all of the functions and features related to that. And speaking of button, we're going to create a reference to it. So that's going to be private button, capital B, and then we're going to just name it button. So that's going to be the reference to the button itself that this script is attached to. And now we're also going to have private int, or I'm sorry, public int difficulty, and then private scene loader. So this variable right here is going to be the difficulty that's associated with the button itself, or represented as an integer. And then we're also going to have a reference to the scene loader, so that way we can use its functions to actually start the game and change scenes. So to that end, I'm going to create a new function at the bottom here called void set difficulty. And I'm going to add an extra line here to demonstrate something. If I do debug.log and then some string, I'm going to have this be game object name plus, and then a string that says was clicked. So what this does is, as the name implies, this is a debugging tool. This will create a message that will appear. I apologize, I'm going to move out of the script again. You should have a console area in Unity. So this debug.log is going to print something to that console. So it's a nice, easy way to check to see if you're making it to certain parts of a function, or if you want to know what value some variable is at a given time during the runtime of your project. So we're going to have that to make sure we're getting where we need to be, even if the function itself isn't performing quite like we expect it to. And now we're going to access our scene loader. And then we're going to call the start game function. And we're going to pass in difficulty. All right. So this is going to be giving you red lines because we never actually set scene. Oh, I also misspelled scene loader. Make sure you spell it correctly as well. I have a capital S there. I should not. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. I just misspelled scene loader twice in 2 different places. Okay. But to the point I was about to make, we never actually set scene loader, so we're going to do that in start function, along with giving this button the actual ability to call our set difficulty. So that is going to be button equals get component button. Okay. So now that will connect our little variable here to the button component that is related to this object that the script is attached to. And now we're going to go button dot on click dot add listener. And then the argument for add listener is going to be the function we want to call when this button is pressed. And that is going to be, of course, set difficulty. And there are normally when you call a function, you would also have to include like the parentheses and the arguments. In this case, there would be no parentheses. This is an exception to that general rule. So don't worry about that. And then last but not least, we need to have our scene loader actually reference the appropriate game object. So game object dot find, and then scene loader, and then we want more specifically the script. So we're going to do a dot get component scene loader. Okay. I'll pause for a moment to make sure everyone is up to date here.
Still no questions. You seem to be good to go.
All right. So save that script. Then I need to actually still add my scene loader to our main menu here. So I'm going to go back to our prefabs and then just plop that into the hierarchy. Okay. And now we need to give the 3 buttons their actual difficulty values. So I'm going to start with the easy button. So you should see in the difficulty button script area, there is the difficulty. And I'm going to give easy a difficulty of 1. Medium is going to have a difficulty of 2. And then finally, hard is going to have a difficulty of 3. Nice and simple. Okay. So if I save that and I click play, give it a moment to load here. Oh, no, I did load, sorry. So I'll click easy. And if I go to my console, you should see easy button was clicked. So we are getting to the function. And we did see that we started the game, of course. However, let me replay the game and let's click hard this time. And you may actually notice that it doesn't seem different. And that is because we're not actually changing the difficulty yet. So that is going to be the last thing we needed to do here. We are going to go to our game manager script. And let's see. So first things first, we need a new variable for our class. So go ahead and add a private int difficulty. And then we are going to add some more lines to our start function. First, we're going to have our difficulty be set equal to the value that is stored within our scene loader game object. I'm actually going to comment this out quickly just to demonstrate something that I did not mention yet. So if I click play, so we actually have a don't destroy on load section over here. Open up, please. Okay. So then if I click, say, the hard button, we'll actually still see that this scene loader is there in this don't destroy on load section. I'll go back to our script. So that means we can still access the variable difficulty that is stored on that object. And we're going to use that here. So we're going to go difficulty equals game object, big G game object, dot find, and scene loader. And then we're going to do get component scene loader. And then we want more specifically the value of the difficulty variable, which I'm going to just do difficulty. That is public too, so I have no problem accessing that. So I'm just checking something. There we go. Okay. So difficulty equals game object dot find scene loader dot get component scene loader difficulty. Next, I'm going to add a debug statement, another debug statement, just for testing sake. I'm going to just have it say the difficulty is set to, and let's have that be set to difficulty. All right. Now, when we start our main game, we should see what our difficulty is at. And now we are going to be changing the difficulty by affecting spawn rate. So spawn rate is actually a misnomer here. We see that we have a spawn rate of 1. Normally, when you think spawn rate is higher, then there would be more things being spawned in a shorter period of time. But actually, this is not a spawn rate so much as the time between at which these two objects are created. So if one object is created, then currently 1 second later, another object would be created. So to increase the difficulty, we're actually going to be decreasing our spawn rate. So I'm going to simply do spawn rate divide equal difficulty. All right. So our easy button has a difficulty of 1. That means spawn rate is going to be divided by 1, and of course that's just spawn rate. So it'll stay at 1 second interval between spawning an object. Our meaty button has difficulty of 2, which means we'll be spawning objects twice as fast as easy mode. And then, of course, our hard button has a difficulty of 3, which means we'll be spawning 3 objects a second. So once again, I'll pause here for a moment, make sure everyone's got these new lines. I'll make sure you save your script too. Okay. So now if I play my game, I can click easy. And we should also see on our console here, it says difficulty is set to 1. So that is consistent with what we wanted. I'm going to go ahead and lose here. So if I click restart, we'll see another console message, difficulty is set to 1. And this does seem the same. All right. So now if I replay the game from the main menu and I click hard instead, you should see a pretty good difference right here. Like I wasn't able to last very long at all. And if I click restart, we're still getting that same crazy spawn rate. And I still wasn't able to do much there. And there we go. We now have working difficulty buttons. All right. So today I've taught you a bit about UI elements with the text and buttons. So and we created a dynamic score text, a game over screen with a working restart button, and now we have a main menu with difficulty changing buttons. Are there any questions at this point in time?
Doesn't look like it.
All right. Well, that's all I have for all of you today. Just a heads up, next week we will be going through another set of code, so there's going to be a different set of starter code. We're going to be walking through a inventory system, and that's going to be taught by one of my fellow officers, Jacob. So you won't be seeing me here.
Any homework?
There is no homework for this particular lesson. No explicit homework, anyways.
All right.
I would say try to incorporate some of these UI elements, these button and text, into your own game.
Yeah,
But otherwise, no explicit homework.
we haven't decided on a time just yet, but there are going to be office hours at some point this week.
All right.
So make sure to tune into that, you guys in the chat. So with that, thanks everyone, and see you next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.